Okay, I'll call this meeting to order of the Leominster Conservation Commission for October 23rd, 2018. First business, we have continued hearings. First agenda item is a notice of intent by Daniel Wolf from Dave E. Ross Associates for the addition of a concrete slab, addition of a loading dock, and filling and replicating a wetland area at 320 Industrial Road. Do we have someone representing the applicant?
Yes. Should I approach the board here? Well, when we left off, I'm sorry, my name is Dan Wolf with David Ross Associates, and when we left off last time, there was a list of 6 or 7 things you wanted me to address. I'll just run through those. I did review the DEP letter, which dealt mostly with some added details of the replication area, more specification on the grading, the erosion control barriers up in that area, and the actual calculation of area. The other items we addressed were I removed that 30-foot no disturb line that I had on there inadvertently. I still don't know where I had come up with that idea, but that line's been removed. I also took your advice and we removed the concrete retaining wall here that we had to avoid disturbance within 30 feet. And with that, I graded it out back down to the toe of slope here, and it allowed me to keep a small portion of that wetland finger. So that is going to be undisturbed up to this point here. The resultant area that we are proposing to fill is 749 square feet. And as you also specified, you were hoping that I could create a replication area of at least 150%, and this is we've got 1,223 square feet, which is more than 150%. The other thing we did is just with some line work on the plan, we did put another line along the edge of this slab, representing and labeling it as a barrier, as well as a sign that will be placed in a couple of locations on this north side here to prevent anyone from pushing snow off in that direction in direct proximity to the wetlands there. Brad, in response to your comment on page 2 where all the details of the Cultec chambers are, we put in a specification for Mass Highway specs for the gravel base underneath those Cultec chambers. And then also in the area of the catch basins, we did create just a riprap slope area there, because that is the area that if these chambers were ever to fill up in a large-scale storm, the overflow would head down this riprap slope. And so that slope is protected with that detail there. And then lastly, I did add a couple of test holes that we did that were witnessed by John Roseberry from the DPW, just ensuring compliance with the groundwater offsets on the recharge areas. So again, that's the list I left with, and I believe we've addressed all of those concerns. So can I answer any questions you have?
What is the size of the riprap material that you're going to be putting on that slope on the corner?
There's 6 to 8 inch.
6 to 8. My concerns were addressed on the good.
I've got one question, just in terms of sequencing. When do you plan on doing the replication area in relation to this project?
On sheet 2, there is a sequencing for the replication, and that is the first step to be done.
Okay.
Actually, when we're discussing the replication area, we typically ask for like 2 growing seasons.
Yes.
just, it always comes up that people come in and they're frantically trying to file for a certificate of compliance, and
Right, and I believe those are also on the notes on sheet 2, the top left is the wetland replication and construction sequence.
I just want to make sure, because a lot of times, we usually, add that as one of the conditions, but people don't realize it, so then they go to get a certificate of compliance, and if
Right.
those conditions haven't been met, then we,
Right. And I did review the DEP guidance for the replication, and they also say the same thing, so that's fully expected.
Who will be doing the monitoring?
Our office can certainly do that. Yeah.
That's it. Anything else, Paul?
I think I'm good, Brad. All set.
Would anyone in the public like to comment on this notice of intent? Second time and third and final time. Anyone in the public like to comment on this notice of intent? Okay, I'll declare it closed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We're gonna vote.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
You want to go ahead?
I'll make a motion for standard order conditions with the boilerplate, with the, I believe it's in there, but just the, that we require 2 growing seasons for the replication area.
There is a set of special conditions for the replication area in there.
Okay.
On the boilerplate, we have that.
And those, I just want to, sorry, are the signs actually on the plan, indicated on the plan, the ones you mentioned?
It's on the slab itself on the right side of the, you're looking at sheet 2. It's on
Yeah.
sheet 1.
Okay.
Just noting that there should be a sign placed there.
Okay. So yeah, if it's on the sheet, then I just wanted to make sure that was my one concern, is getting stuff pushed out. So standard order conditions with the boilerplate. I don't think there were any other special conditions for this one.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next agenda item is another continued hearing. Public hearing to consider notice of intent for the clearing of 37,000 square feet of land and construction of a new 2-story building within the buffer zone of a bordering vegetated wetland at Central Street, map 500, lot 5. Do you have someone to represent the applicant? Yes, sir.
Gotta get a better chair.
For the record, Chris Anderson with Hannigan Engineering, here on behalf of the Lot 5 Realty Trust for the construction of a 9,600 square foot commercial building. Just to give us a quick overview of the project, there will be a proposed 9,600 square foot 2-story commercial building with access to the top level through the front of the property and additional parking near the rear for the second level. We'll have a paved access drive that will pretty much circumvent the entire site to provide access and parking and whatnot. We'll be providing stormwater management improvements and various other utilities such as sewer and water. Since our last hearing, we've had a sidewalk, reviewed everything that was out on the site. We have received DEP comments and have gotten planning board's approval for site plan approval. Just some full disclosure for the board, our commission, there's only one concern that the planning board had. They have requested that we relocate our dumpster pad towards the rear of the site to allow for a more direct route for truck traffic emptying and discharging of the waste and trash bucket. And by default, that moves it to the outer edge of the 100-foot buffer zone. Like I said before, we have received comments back from DEP. I can review those really quickly. They're primarily relative to the test pits within the underground storage system. It's noted that we're required to have the 2 feet of separation from the seasonal high groundwater table to provide further documentation for stormwater standard 3. This system is not being intended as an infiltration system. The soils in the area are not ideal or suitable for infiltration. As such, infiltration and recharge is not required as part of this project. Further note to that is that much of the system is actually at or above existing grade, with the exception of the southernmost portion of the site, or the system, where there's about an 18-inch cut. That in combination with the subdrain, which will be set 2 feet below the actual underground storage system stone and chambers, it's our belief that the groundwater won't be an issue on this drainage system. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
What's the closest work to the wetlands?
Closest work will be at around wetland flag number 22, and there's going to be from the flag to the face of wall, there's going to be about a 5-foot separation.
Would you be opposed to putting in the orange construction fence just to prevent any debris or anything from floating over into the wetland area since it's so close?
I don't see why not. We also have silt fence on it. Commission would like.
Just with the slope, it makes me a little concerned. Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Who made that sidewalk?
Myself, Paul, and Dan.
Did you look at that discharge area from Central Street? What's happening from that pipe down to the wetland?
It appears as though the stream coming out of that discharge pipe kind of dendritics out, and you've got about 5 different streams.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty disorganized as it goes down. So I think the plan is that the 18-inch reinforced concrete pipe would capture all of that and direct it down to that riprap swale there. At least I assume that's the plan.
Yes, sir.
What if it doesn't?
Well, the stormwaters will eventually hit this, and it's a 10-foot level spreader device, so it's going to function as much as we can get it to work. 10-foot level spreader is a pretty good size area, and our belief is that it's going to be providing the proper velocity mitigation prior to hitting that wetland.
I saw the same concerns. I mean, you're taking water that normally would just, like you said, trickle out and disperse among 5 streams, and you're concentrating it, and you're dumping it within, what, like 10 feet of a wetland?
Yeah.
So now all that sediment's going to be just discharged directly into a wetland.
Yeah. And we did take a look at that. A option that we can take a look at is doing a deep sump manhole structure. It will function similar to a deep sump catch basin, be 4-foot sump underneath the invert. But we have to get a permission from Mass DOT to make sure that they're able to accommodate that and be able to do the maintenance on that, which is our primary concern relative to that. I can't put any kind of proprietary structure just because it's a substantial amount of water coming off of this area, and there's no way we could properly accommodate that. Plus, with the level spreader device, there is some additional, as the velocity drops down, the sediment's also going to drop out of suspension. And this is also going to be part of our operation and maintenance because it is close to our wall, and we want to make sure that that does function as properly, so nothing gets starts failing and the wall gets buried.
Where was this on Central Street?
We have the Jehovah's Witness.
Okay, yeah. So it kind of slopes.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a lot of fill from this side, and this one kind of, once you get off the road, kind of drops off
Yeah.
suddenly.
Okay.
Which is why we're trying to do the 2-story to try to mitigate that as much as possible.
What is the elevation of groundwater, Chris, where you're going to put in this system?
We don't know yet, because of how restricted it is to get to the site, we're not gonna be able to get there until construction. It was a concern brought up by DPW, and they were part of the new ordinance going into place that we have to perform deep tests in these areas. So that will be performed prior to full construction with the DPW as a witness. But as I said before, we only have a maximum of an 18-inch cut in one corner of this system, and the rest is going to be at or above grade.
At or above grade. And there's no groundwater test pit anywhere on the site yet?
Not yet, no.
And what is the elevation in the lower right-hand corner of that system?
Right here?
No, come on, back up to that infiltration system, right up there. If you come in, what's the elevation on the corner of that?
Right here?
Yeah.
The existing grade is around the 459 mark, with our bottom structure being at 460.8. So there's still a substantial amount of fill that we have to put into there.
Right.
So Chris, I had same concern that Larry has with that discharge from the Mass DOT pipe. I'm not convinced you can't put a proprietary device in there. And if you have high flows, you can certainly have an offline system that will bypass the high flows. My experience also with working in Mass DOT easements, they're not going to maintain it, so that's going to be on the onus of the property owner anyway, even though it's their discharge, and it's pretty common for them to enter agreements to do that. So my personal opinion is you should be doing something better there to treat the water than what you're currently proposing.
Okay, yeah. So would the commission be amenable to the deep something? Provide some kind of TSS removal, granted if we take ownership of it.
When you say deep sump, are you talking like a catch basin type system, or are you talking?
It would be a typical manhole structure we've done in other sites where you have the invert of the pipe and the 4-foot sump underneath it. So
In just the manhole?
in just the manhole, yes.
Yeah, that's going to get washed out.
With regular maintenance, we can try to...
Any flow is going to send that right out of there. Yeah, that's why you don't have catch basins online either for that purpose. Those streams you mentioned, Paul, those are just really erosion rills, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
but they were all flowing the day we were there, or the night we were there.
So basically it hits the headwater of that and it just kind of meanders into all of the rills?
It comes out of that head wall and it just takes off.
Yeah.
There's one good-sized channel, which obviously is the main drainage, but it's just everywhere
Yeah.
after that. What is the flow rate out of that drainage pipe on a typical basis? Do you have any calculations for the flow coming off of the street
No.
onto the property? You don't?
Unfortunately, no, just because we would have to evaluate the entire length of Central Street all the way up to almost Tech in order to determine the rates coming out of there. But I'm talking with DOT, their concern was as long as you're able to maintain the same capacity that that pipe has now,
Yeah.
it's sufficient in their eyes.
Anything else?
I have the same concerns you two do.
I'm equally as concerned about the groundwater elevation. What in the sequence of things, when would that be established?
Once we get into the construction, once we get the access drive cut in, we can go back out there and get the testing done at that point in time.
But what's the worst case scenario that would cause a real problem with this system that you're proposing?
Nothing really substantial. We are going to be putting a sub-drain system in it that's 2 feet below the bottom of the 2 feet. So it's going to intercept the groundwater as if it does become an issue before it gets up there and remove it from the system. So we're maintaining the capacity within that storage system. It's very similar to what we do in our detention basins. And that'll have an offline clean out and everything like that for inspection purposes.
So I think what you're hearing from us, Chris, is we've got concern with that discharge from Central Street.
Yep.
And you really need to work that out with Mass DOT, because whatever you put within your easement, you're going to need their blessing for it. So I guess at this point, what would you like to do?
If it's the commission stance for a proprietary structure, I need to review that with DOT and my client, because that's a substantial financial contribution to this project, so.
Anyone else have anything? Would anyone in the public like to comment on this?
Hi, Patrick McCarty, 1281 Central Street. We formerly own the Jehovah's Witness property, and we still own the property in between Jehovah's Witnesses and the animal hospital. On our property, in between us and the animal hospital, we had the same condition. Granted, this was probably 15, 18 years ago, and we did the same approach that Chris is talking about here with Mass DOT, where we put a manhole at the end of the pipe and actually turned it, because it dumped directly in the middle of our site, turned it and brought it to the property line and ran a swale all the way down to the back. We never found an easement for any of these discharges that occur all the way along Central Street. That was just the way Mass DOT built the road back then, is they essentially shelved the road into the side of the hill, put catch basins and just dumped them out on the low side as they went along. So I don't know if you were able to find one, I'd be surprised, but I don't believe there's any easements on any of these properties that allow for these discharges. It's just something that Mass DOT did back in the day. So that's my 2 cents. And then just more as a curious abutter, do you have a use for the building? Is there a proposed
No,
tenant?
the final tenant build-out's still being worked out. But
Okay.
Tenants is commercial, it's most impactful regarding parking and whatnot.
So then, if I could offer, just historically, we've owned this property for, I don't know, maybe 30 years. And did the site development for the Kingdom Hall. And our detention basins are way down, almost at the elevation of the old light gauge railroad. Good sand and gravel, good depth of groundwater. So I wouldn't be surprised if they find decent results when they go to do their test pits. So if that helps with your concern at all. That's my historical 2 cents on it. Thanks.
Chris, real quick, with respect to the easement, I think I saw a book and page reference
Yeah,
at some point.
I was able to hunt that.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Surprising. Was it recently recorded?
It was, I had to go do a deep dive into the registry for that one.
Must be the only one on the street.
Anybody else like to comment on this notice of intent? Second time and third and final time. Any more comments on this public hearing? Okay, would you like to continue it, Chris, or?
I would like to continue and just work out that one issue with the structures.
Angela, do you know the date for our next?
November 13th.
November 13th?
Yep.
Okay, so we will continue this till November 13th at 6 p.m.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we're now into our new hearings. We have a public hearing to consider a notice of intent from Curtis Tree Service for the relocation of the existing portable garage structure to the rear of the lot and the construction of a new garage building with associated site work, utilities, and drainage. A portion of the work will be within the 200-foot riparian zone of the Nashua River, and the address is 158 Crawford Street. Is anyone here representing the applicant?
My name is Brian Marchetti with McCarty Engineering, here tonight with Patrick McCarty and Justin LeClaire from McCarty Engineering as well, on behalf of Curtis Bodmer, the owner of the property. So this site is located at 158 Crawford Street. I don't know if we were able to do the site work before the meeting, but it's immediately south of airport trailer services in the Fitchburg Airport, which is right here, just north of it. The existing site is about 2.5 acres. It's currently occupied by Curtis Tree. There's a office building on it. There's a detached metal garage. And currently, there's a portable garage structure, which is just an open air garage that's covered where he parks cranes and other equipment that they use for their tree clearing equipment. So he came to us looking to expand the property. Business is growing. He's looking to develop, expand, and put in a new, bigger 6,000 square foot garage, multi-bay, where he can park his cranes inside, be out of water, his other service trucks and such, while maintaining the existing two-car or metal garage that's on the property and office building. And then the portable garage that's in the back of the site, he's going to relocate and maintain that as well. As we said, this is located just to the south of the airport. The Nashua River is located to the west of the property. There's a significant topography change from Crawford Street down to the Nashua River. It's about 60 feet or so. So here from Crawford Street down to the back where the proposed developed area is, it's I believe 10 feet or so, 10 to 15 feet. And then from the developed site back, it's another 40-foot plus drop to the river. So the riverfront area, we do have a portion developed within it, but it's a pretty minimal impact. Right now, the existing site today, I can show you. This plan here, being the survey, we have where the loam pile is back here, and the log storage. So back here is the fully developed limit. In this property, because it's within the zone of the airport has come through and cleared these properties. So I know there was, I don't know if you saw today the email from DEP came through. Everything that's happened on this property has been cleared by the airport and state. So the owner of this, if you look at Google Earth and you see the historical imagery, back to the mid-90s, it's the same limit where they maintain and clear. It's all to do with the approach path of the airplanes coming into the airport. So that line you can see is right here, which is this current tree line, right here in the site plan. So the site overall is 2.5 acres. The existing site, there's about 1.2 acres of impervious on the property, which includes the existing edge of pavement and then the compacted gravel. It's rock solid out there all the way back to this tree line on the limit of clearing, which again has been maintained by the airport. So when you look from the old existing site now to the proposed site, we're actually limiting and reducing and pulling back the property. So it is considered a redevelopment. We've got about 1.2 acres of impervious and building on the existing site, and proposed here we're at just under 0.9 acres. I did meet with DPW. We went through this with the town engineer, kind of our methodology and design approach, and they've agreed with what we've done in designing this as a redevelopment. So in review of the stormwater standards, we still comply with all 10 standards. We have no new untreated discharges on the property. development plan for the utilities and stormwater on site includes, where currently everything sheet flows from east to west off the site. So everything from the paved areas in front across the gravel and the buildings, all just sheet flows through down to the undeveloped portion of the gravel area, overland to the Nashua River. We're putting in 2 catch basins, deep sump catch basins. All the roof leaders are tied to the drainage system. And then we are installing a water quality unit before it gets discharged down the west side of the property. So we're achieving well in excess of 80% of TSS removed from the property. So as I said, there's no new untreated discharges. Our pre-posts, we meet, as I said before, we're reducing the impervious by quite a bit, about 0.3, a third of an acre or so. So our post-development runoff rates and volumes are less than the existing conditions. The water quality is being provided, as I said, through the catch basins and the water quality unit. This is not a use associated with high potential pollutant loading, so we meet standard 5. 6, this is not a critical area. The Nashua River is not within an ORW. And again, we're treating the stormwater anyway to a level that's exceeds the standard. It's a mix of new and redevelopment because, yes, we are expanding some areas, we're adding buildings, but we are reducing impervious on site. We've provided erosion controls on the property. And because the development is over an acre, before construction begins, there will be a SWIP that's filed. And again, the illicit discharges on the property, there are no known discharges, and we are taking the proposed conditions, all rooftops, impervious and impervious area within the parking areas to the proposed catch basins. So because we are doing some development here within the 200-foot riparian zone, you can see the 100-foot is here. We're not doing any work within the 100. And then within the 200, as I said, this tree line back here is the current limit of gravel on the property, compacted gravel. So we're pulling back the usable and developed portion of the site. Because of the grade change through the property, we're filling in the back here and raising the site so it's a more usable parking area for the buildings. So we are off-grading within that gravel area. But overall, there's about, I believe, 60,000 square feet of area within the riparian zone of the property, and we're impacting about 5,000 square feet. So it's just about 8%. But I want to note that 5% of that 8% is already degraded riverfront area. That's within the gravel areas of the property. So it's a pretty minimal impact. We provided DEP an alternatives analysis. The development needs of Curtis, his business is growing, he's buying more equipment, and we need the area, or he needs the area to park his cranes and his equipment. Right now, it's all contained underneath this one open-air garage, or portable garage structure. So that's the main reason for this development is to build this 6,000 square foot building where we'll have 5 bays where the cranes and other equipment and trucks will be parked. This portable garage structure will be relocated, which will still be used. And the existing structures up here on the site will be maintained as well. As I said earlier, we did get a letter today, the notice from DEP, that they reviewed the application. We have a DEP number filed. There were several questions that they included in their review that I'd like to briefly go through. I think a good part of this is all easily addressed, and it's more out of a misunderstanding or not understanding how the site is set up and the situation of where it's located, being within the flight path of the airport. So the first comment says, based on the 2013, 14, and 17 aerial images available with Mass GIS, it appears the riverfront area was impacted, and it does not appear that any of this work was permitted. Because it's within the flight path, as I said before, this was done by the airport. They have an easement across the property that allows them to come in and clear trees within the flight path. So that was all done by at the airport.
They've come in to us for that. They had to get
Yeah, as
approval from
I've
us.
spoken to
yeah.
them recently, so.
So it may not have been filed through the owner of the site, but it was done through the airport, so. The total area that's been impacted within the riverfront area should be calculated to determine the total alteration. This goes back to her first comment about it wasn't permitted before. The alternatives analysis should consider the practical alternatives instead of providing only alternatives that do not meet the goal of the project. So we're very restricted on this property. There's a significant portion, 60,000 square feet of the 2.5 acres is riverfront area. They're developed right now. You see the limit back here where it's all compacted gravel that they've been using. This proposal actually makes the site smaller. We're taking usable area here that's all compacted level gravel that's being currently used by the applicant as part of his day-to-day activities and maneuvering space, and we're pulling it back as much as we can outside of the riverfront area to still maintain enough usable square footage and pavement area for the maneuvering of cranes and his other equipment. So alternative-wise, the first alternative is the preferred alternative, which you see in front of us. The second alternative I proposed was pulling these structures back and trying to minimize the amount of area on site, but it just didn't work for the owner. He had very specific requirements of what he wanted to fit on here, which brings us back to this preferred alternative. And then the third alternative was the no-build, which clearly doesn't work for the owner whose business is developing and growing. He's growing out of the current space that he had. The next question was the mean annual high water line associated with the Nashua River flagged in the field? It doesn't appear to be flags on the plan. The Nashua River line here was based on a survey which was located in the field by the surveyor. But because of the topography and the grade difference, we didn't have it flagged. It's a vertical bank from down here right off the river up to the site. There's about a 60-foot topography change across the property, where 50 or so feet of it is down here at the lower part of the slope. That's beyond the limit of what we're the current limit of disturbance into previously graded riverfront area. So the exact limit of it was not flagged. And because we're proposing work almost up to the 200-foot line, we'd be well outside of the buffer zone of any wetlands flag down there. So the mean annual high water line. So there's a floodplain coming. It's coming up. So the stormwater report should use land code that reflects the previous existing conditions prior to the unpermitted work. Again, this goes back to what's out here, the limit of what's been cleared. And this is the limit of what's been cleared historically by the airport. If you go back and look as early as on Google Earth, you can see back to the early 90s, 95. It's been cleared, it grows back in, it's been cleared, it grows back in. So this is the limit of where they've continuously been clearing back to. So historically, we're where it should be, and these are the accurate coverage numbers that I use in my drainage analysis, which before I submitted it, I went and called the Leominster town engineers and spoke with Mr. Roseberry and Pimerini about it, my methodology, and they agreed on what was proposed. And if you saw, they did submit other town review comments, and they had no comments. The next comment was the slope surrounding the proposed parking area is called out as being covered with wood chips. Is this permanent proposed cover type? If so, the land use code does not appear to be represented. So, if you look at our color graphic on this site, this is proposed lawn area. Right now, there is some lawn area up in the front, so light green is going to remain lawn. This is all crushed stone. This is pavement. Buildings, and this light brown is all our off-grading on the slope. We had proposed wood chips. We're just going to use some sort of pervious cover type because it's 2 to 1 in some areas, it's 3 to 1 in other areas. We're trying to minimize the impact to the riverfront area, so we're not grading off at a 5 to 1 slope or something like that to meet grades. We're pulling it in tight. So we proposed wood chips, so it wouldn't have to be mowed and maintained. It was modeled as such with as a landscaped area. It is wood chips, it's still pervious, it's not like we're proposing millings or pavement on it. And even the riprap is pervious, it flows through. This site is located within an A soil group, so these are very sandy soils. So anything we have here is still going to percolate through. So as I said, the town engineers reviewed it. I went through it with them and they agreed to how we model this. A sign and stamp solar report's required. They've got everything, so I don't understand that comment. They should have a sign and stamp stormwater report. And the final comment was to note the floodplain of the property. As I said, it's a 60-foot grade change from Crawford Street down to the river, and about 50 feet of it is within this developed area. The floodplain is right on the bank, down really low by the river. It clearly doesn't creep up, or else the whole airport and everything will be completely underwater. So we're well outside the limits of the floodplain. And those really were the only comments that we had received. I thought we could go into detail tonight if you have any questions about it or any other portion of this development. Be happy to answer.
If I could chime in, Patrick McCarty Engineering, just wanted to elaborate a little bit more on the alternatives. This is probably option number 7 that we went through. We really played with this building over and over and over again to find out the best way that it could work on the site. About a year ago, Kurt purchased a new crane that's like 54 feet long. The thing's massive. So in order to get that thing in the site, turn around and actually get it in the garage, you need a lot of room to turn. They don't turn on a dime like a passenger car. And the other thing is that the wind really comes off the airport. So if we face the garage doors towards the airport, those garage doors will be rattling like crazy in the wind, which would obviously be a nuisance to a brand new building. So we went through option after option after option to come up with the plan that's before you. And actually, since this survey was done, the airport cleared again a couple of years ago, and it's cleared even further down to the river than we're showing on our current plan. And then, as Brian mentioned, there is no BBW associated with the Nashua. It's a wooded slope, well, what remains of the wooded slope all the way down, and then a straight drop off into the river. We've been down there years and years ago. Geez, I don't know, again, 15, 18 years ago, we ran that 24-inch drain line down there that picked up runoff from airport sales, and also there's a city culvert that comes underneath the Crawford Street and down. So very familiar with the area. And we think that it's a good design, kind of making the best out of the difficult site with the topography. You think you have a 4-acre lot to work with, but you really only have 2. And I think that the DEP reviewer's comments are just from someone that hasn't seen the site and is looking at a flat piece of paper during the review. That's all. Thank you. Well, and hopefully the commission will support this.
Does the airport need some kind of easement to be able to get back there?
There's an easement established, it's called an approach easement, that covers a big portion of this whole area that comes through. So I'm not sure of the exact language on the easement, but they access it through these properties.
Yeah, they came right along the whole river, Larry, all the way up and cleared through, yeah. All the way even into Fitchburg, because we permitted Airport Road, the Garden Remedies site, and they cleared right up. I mean, you can stand Garden Remedies now and look through the airport all the way over to here. It's
Yeah, I guess the
amazing.
regulations really changed, so they have.
Yeah, it's off of this. It was the approach improvements a couple of years ago to make it safer for planes coming in and out.
To me, this just seems like it's very minimal. I mean, it seems like the building, it's the corner of the building. It's already a developed site. I personally don't see having concerns.
Any questions, Liz?
No, I mean, I looked it over. It's good.
This diagram here shows this as a loam pile, but isn't this a wood chip pile?
It's more of a fill pile. It's a mix of, I think it's they're a tree service, so it's probably scrap.
Yeah, the piles tend to change.
Yeah.
And where, if all of this were to be constructed, where would the owner store that material?
That would be removed off the site.
So there'd be no further storage of material?
I can't say that. I don't know what they're going to be using, but right now, the whole site existing just sheets off to the river. The way we've graded the site is everything comes down to the middle, everything in the back comes down to the middle of the catch basins. So anything that they do store on the site, they do put in the paved areas of the property is going to go to catch basins and the water quality.
Right. The wood chip material that you're proposing as a landscaping agent,
Yes.
what contains that from being transported with the sheet flow of the runoff down the bank?
Wood chips are,
They flow.
well, they flow. Honestly, it won't anymore because everything is draining to the middle of the site. So we don't have runoff sheeting from the rooftops. We don't have runoff sheeting across the property onto the slopes. And the only thing that's going to get on the wood chips is physically what falls on them in the rain. So you won't.
So it's graded back.
Everything is graded back. So everything from the corners, the whole limit of pavement sheets into these two catch basins. And everything from up here sheets back to these two catch basins.
So it's a big bowl in the
So it's a
middle.
big bowl in the middle. Everything will be contained within the paved area. It's treated through the catch basins and then it goes out through this water quality unit.
But isn't there a 10-foot drop from that building?
From the back of the building down.
Right. And isn't that covered with wood chips?
It is. But what I'm saying is you're not going to have sheet flow that's going to flow across the site and is going to channelize into a concentrated
But
flow.
you're still going to have a 10-foot drop covered with wood chips.
Right, yes.
What's going to keep them in place?
I mean, the nature of wood chips, we've done giant slopes with a lot bigger than this with wood chips and they don't flow.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, I do have a question now. In between those two buildings,
Yes.
it's 25-foot space.
Yes.
Is there a curb at the end or anything, or,
No, we have no curb proposed.
so it just keeps going?
No,
I mean,
because this is graded,
Right.
it's graded back into
Oh,
the
it's
site.
graded that way.
So this is all graded back inside of these catch basins. This is all graded.
so
So
it's
the
all-
middle of the site is a bowl. It's all
Okay.
going to be contained. It will be treated through the deep sump catch basins and the water quality.
Yeah, so it's just the raindrops that would fall on those wood chips.
These rooftops.
There's no runoff from the pavement areas onto wood chips.
But presumably somebody could drive back there.
I guess they
It's
could.
one heck of a ride.
No, I don't mean overly.
And, it's a paved site, so there's gonna be places for plowing and snow removal, pile on the side and the back and the sides. The erosion control line back here, if it's a concern to you, can it stay in place for, a year or whatever? I mean, once the wood chips are down, they're not going anywhere, but at least we could, make a condition to keep the erosion control there for so long after, so you can inspect it and see that it's not washing out. And then if it does get through, you've got a pretty level gravel area, and then you've got 150 feet of fielded woodland before it gets to the Nash. So it's still quite a ways down before it ever hit the resource area.
We have a sidewalk scheduled for Monday for this property.
Next Monday?
Is it next Monday?
Monday the 29th at 5 p.m. What's the timeline for this project?
Patrick,
Originally, we were optimistic in getting in the ground this year, but man, the weather lately's been making me nervous on that one, so I think could potentially happen this year. We still obviously have planning board. You never know. We broke ground on a project last December 27th, so
Yeah.
it's hard to say. But, the cranes are a very significant investment for a company. And so he's obviously anxious to get them inside where they're, out of the elements. So he'd like to see this happen.
I see. In regards to the erosion controls, would you be open to maybe going with a coconut fiber or a mulch wattle? Just because it's going to be pretty difficult to get down there if you need to change those out over time.
Absolutely.
Once those last a little bit longer. Coconut, I think it's coconut fiber, right, Brad?
Yeah.
Like the coir logs?
Yeah, those ones.
They're a lot heavier duty.
Yeah, I figured it'd be a little easier instead of sending someone down there every couple months after a rainstorm or snowstorm.
Obviously, coconuts aren't native to Massachusetts. Is that something that's readily available? I mean, if we have to purchase them in Florida and ship them up here, then no, probably not. But if there's something that's readily available,
I believe they are readily
all right.
available.
That's the first time I've had that request.
Or mulch, it's something that's a little bit more heavy duty because the straw wattles will degrade pretty quickly.
It's like a compost filter tube. Is that?
What do you think, Brad?
I think the coir log's a little overkill for something like this. But what was proposed in the plan?
Straw wattle.
Straw wattle. So that's
12-inch straw wattle, right? Yeah, don't forget we're 180 feet from the resource.
Right.
Yeah, so it didn't call out the size, but I think the standard straw wattles are 8-inch.
Well, there's 3 sizes. You can get a 12, but you just pay more.
I was just thinking if the project started and then had to stop, and you had to keep going out there to refresh them, it might be frustrating.
Whatever you want. You drop in the bucket for projects like this.
I have a couple questions too. When you say wood chips, you're talking something rugged like stump grindings. You're not talking a bark mulch or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. And what grade slope is that on?
So there's a in the back corner over here, we have 2-to-1, and we're gentle, 3-to-1, not more gentle, but it's 3-to-1 on the side over here, and then we're 2-to-1 in the back.
Nothing steeper than 2 to 1?
No.
Okay. And then my other question is, what's between that flared end and that existing, looks like a catch basin downstream? Is that a catch basin right there?
Yeah. So I mean, what's through here is just, it's inside a wood line, it's brush. It's just a natural kind of forested underbrush cover where we're just proposing to discharge it and let it, allow this flow before it comes through, it doesn't get to that catch basin. With that catch basin, it takes a lot of the airport sales property. Although it's on our property, but it flows across. So.
Right. My concern is, and I've got a lot of experience with putting point source discharges out in the middle of the slope, is that you'll create these erosion rills like we were talking about with another project tonight. Mm-hmm. So if there's any opportunity to take advantage of any existing infrastructure there, or to add something different to try to prevent that from happening, it's a little hard for me to visualize on the plan without seeing the site in particular, but that's one of my concerns.
Well, I mean, where it's discharging, we could certainly open up into a level spreader. We've got the area behind here.
Yeah.
I was just trying to do less of an impact within the riverfront area, but we could easily open up to a level spreader that runs along the bottom of that slope, 10 feet wide, 4-stone riprap, and let it flow over. And then broadcast as we're over a wider area. That's an easy detail I can add.
Anyone else have any additional? Would anyone in the public like to comment on this notice of intent? second time, and third and final time. Okay, so we've got a site walk continued or scheduled for next week. Would you like to request continuance at this time?
Sure. Request a continuance.
So we will continue this to 6 p.m. on November 13th.
Thank you.
Jump around here.
Like I do know Mrs. Harris will be coming at 2:07 for the enforcements.
Okay, so we're gonna move down the agenda to item number 9 under enforcement. And the first order of business is 19 Willow Street. Do we have any updates on that, Angela?
As far as I know, not at this time. They'll be communicating with Mr. Broder.
Dave?
They've asked to communicate with Mr. Broder.
Okay. Is anyone here for that this evening?
Yes.
Would you like to speak on that?
I actually emailed Mr. Broder, is that how you say his last name? Dan?
Yes.
The clerk's office had given us, I guess, the wrong email. Wendy Hurley from HR just this evening got back to me with a different email address for him, so I'm going to forward to him what we had done. I had emailed him on Friday morning or Friday afternoon to give him the 24-hour notice that we were going to clean that portion up. And just to clarify that we had agreed at the last meeting here that we would go down to the water level, I think we had said 2 to 3 feet. But the enforcement order had said to give the 24-hour notice. So that was the notice. Again, it didn't go through to him, but it was sent, and I'll email him again tonight with the correct email address. We did clean it up. We took pictures of the area that we dumped in.
Okay. Do you have?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This was before, where you guys told me to pick up to the water's edge, and that was the after. I actually hired a company basically to come out and to fly with what you guys were asking. Sir, can I ask you a quick question? From my understanding, wetlands, conservation, anything can't be disturbed by piping, drainage, or anything, right?
No, it can under a limited project criteria.
Okay.
So
What would that consist? Because there actually was drainage put in on Abbott Ave to the back of my property to the people that live behind me.
Historical drainage. Yeah, a lot of the roadway infrastructure was done many decades ago, and ultimately those daylight down to a wet area.
All right.
But,
and one more question if I could ask. How did you guys come up with that it was conservation wetland? Just because I went back into basically back when they did the tennis courts on Abbott Ave and stuff like that, and basically it was just for fishery. Like there was fish in that wet spot. And I was just trying to understand how you guys came up with your decision.
okay. Well, having fish in a wetland in a wet area is a pretty good indicator it's a wetland, because
Okay.
you don't have fish habitat in something that doesn't stay wet very long.
Right.
But in general, the the wetlands anywhere are dynamic, and the definition of them have changed over the years.
Okay.
Under the current regulations, a wet area has to border on something. So you have you have the wetland vegetation, soils and hydrology in your backyard. What makes it a protected bordering wetland is the actual stream that leaves it. So there's a channel that leaves the back of that area, which when Angela and I were walking on the abutter's property, we saw water flowing and we were actually able to take pictures and video of it. Down that channel, it also flows into a drainage system that was created to intercept it at some time. Ultimately, it goes under the road and then into another wetland resource area down off of
I had Washington
and
and
Washington,
Stearns.
right? But really, all that's needed is the channel right immediately adjacent to that wet area.
So if it didn't rain as much and it dries up, there's no funneling water coming out of my property until it rains.
Right. So by definition, instead of a stream that would flow all the time would be a perennial stream, and it would be a river under the wetlands protection regs. The last public hearing that we had, we were talking about a river, a stream that flows all the time. This one would be intermittent, so it would dry up. And in my experience, a lot of the intermittent streams are dry most of the time.
Okay.
So if you were to go back there, you'd probably see it dry quite often.
All right.
If you go back there after it rains or in the spring or some heavy fall events like we've been having, you'll see the water flowing back there.
All right. And last but not least, so basically this property is like unusable. No one can touch it. It just sits there. Right.
Well, I wouldn't know what you mean by unusable. I mean, you can have passive recreation in wetlands, things of that nature, but to alter it, to fill it in, something of that, you would need this commission's permission to do that.
Okay, so I don't have your permission to dump grass clippings there.
You shouldn't be filling anything in the wetland.
So should I go to Abbott Ave and tell my neighbors not to throw everything over their fence on my property?
Which neighbors?
Just everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We found old
Oh, it's a
stovepipes.
I actually received a call, it's in our communications, I received a call from DEP this week. Someone did make a complaint about it, and I had spoken, I believe with you and with Dan, about if we should send out a letter to the neighbors as a reminder on, the leaf litter, the collection days, as well as you can't dump in the wetlands or alter a wetland. I've done that for a couple other neighborhoods, so.
Okay.
I wanted to have the commission
the
vote on
properties
it.
that are involved with this?
Yep, I did a 200-foot radius, as well as the properties I've been informed that were doing it.
Okay. Yeah, we should send something out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to have the commission vote on it first.
Okay, we can do that.
And if anybody needs to come on my property to check or anything, just let me know. We can schedule an appointment.
Okay. Well, I guess what we'll do is we'll wait for the chair to receive your correspondence, and then if it's okay, we'll contact you for the inspection.
All right.
Okay. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Is there anything else that needs to be done?
The picture is somewhat helpful, but I think ultimately just the site inspection to see that it's been completed. And like I said, once the chair gets that info and consults with the commission, we'll hopefully just schedule another site walk and be done with it. Okay.
Just one more thing. Something that the city of Leominster does do, if you contact the assessor's office, if you have wetlands on your property, they can change your taxes that you get for the year. You have to contact them to decide the exact amount, but they would go out there and they would see how large the property is unusable, and then that would adjust that for you as well, just so you are aware.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Jim Conway, 23 Willow Street. I live right next to him. When did that become wetlands? I lived there 60 years. It was never wetlands, as far as I know. And one of the people that worked, I think here, said that we could do whatever we wanted in the back there. So we were always under the assumption it never was wetland.
Okay. When it becomes a wetland is when it meets the criteria under the regulations. So under the current regulations, it does meet the criteria for the definition of a border and vegetated wetland.
Okay. But do we receive notice or did it just become a wetland?
No, it's not
Did it
something.
become a desert?
No, and quite frankly, from looking at it and knowing the regulations over the past 20 plus years, it didn't just become a wetland. It would have been a wetland for at least a couple decades now.
Well, like you said before, we used to play football on there.
Yeah.
We played baseball. But more importantly, he moved in here. He had no idea that that was a wetland. I had no idea that that was a wetland. The people next door to me, Roland Lane, didn't know it was a wetland. Jimmy McCarty across the street didn't know it was a wetland. Chucky Bigelow didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody had noticed that he was dumping in a wetland.
And grass clippings, I mean,
And that's the only thing, you know, that we had no idea that it was a wetland.
Right.
So whatever was done inadvertently or without any malice of ruining, you know, a habitat for fish or whatever.
Sure, and I think this commission understands that.
Okay.
I mean, under the wetland regs, I mean, ultimately, you can fine and penalize people for violations. With this type of a wetlands violation, we understand that a lot of times, particularly with yard refuse, that it's really ignorance, not knowing what a wetland is and that it's protected, so we get that. Ultimately, we just need to see that that activity stops and anything that was altered gets restored. And that's all this commission really asked for.
That's all we just, you know, nobody wants to get fined or anything
Right.
for an inadvertent dump.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's all I got, thank you.
Sure, thank you. Okay, so I think we'll try to accommodate the people in the audience now. We'll go back where it's on our regular meeting and go to item number 5 under the Hill Street Conservation Management Area. Update on Parks and Recreation involvement.
Yes, so I did reach out to Judy from the Park and Rec Department about trail kiosk signs. She does have a budget for it, and typically what happens is she has add a sign, develop the sign, and then usually either Mr. O'Brien or CTEI will create the actual physical kiosk. So we did discuss that a little bit, and then Mr. Neil Wyman was supposed to be here tonight. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like he is. But I did speak to Mr. Dick O'Brien at the conference on Saturday. He did mention to me that he would have no problem building the kiosk in his garage for the site, but he was a little disappointed. He would like to discuss with the commission as to why it's not going to resemble the other kiosks in the town where they have the City of Leominster map on it versus the map that we had shown that shows us the trail loop and then the map with the 500-foot radius. I did explain to him the issues in that this site is a little bit different, but he would like to discuss that with the commission before he commits. I do know I was supposed to produce another map with both maps combined. Unfortunately, I'm having a little bit of trouble in the PDF department moving the images around. So I figured that once we decide on the final product, I can ask Adesign to do that. Because they're graphic designers.
Anyone else have anything you want to discuss on this?
We have that secondary kiosk too. I mean, if we had to have a special, map, if we wanted to keep it standard to what the city has,
Yeah.
we have that secondary kiosk that already exists. We could have Adesign make a special map that would fit inside of that kiosk. It's just an idea. I mean,
yeah, it would have been nice though to get rid of a lot of that signage.
yeah. It's just,
Minimize.
having it standardized to the city though, there's probably some benefit to that as well.
He did discuss maybe putting the city map on one side and the trail map on the other side, but he wanted to discuss it himself with the commission. And I let him know our next meeting's on November 13th, so. But Mr. Wyman was supposed to be here to discuss the actual trail steward's involvement, so.
Okay. So really at this time, we're just waiting to have discussions with them.
Yeah.
Okay. You all set? All right, let's move up to the beginning of our regular meeting then. Item number 2, certificates of compliance. So we have that request for certificate for 567 Pierce Street. you have an update on that?
Yes, I did provide you all with pictures from my most recent site visit there. I was out there on Friday. It's in your packets for tonight. When I was out there, I did discover that the home has been sold and there are new residents living there. So I did email Mr. Van Dyke to provide the affidavit per the order conditions that they received it. He is working on that. He responded back asking me for an affidavit. I explained to him his lawyers would have to draw that up. I also discussed with him that the silt fencing and hay bales would need to be maintained until the area is stabilized, which at this time it is not. It looks like where the dumpster was, a truck drove over it again, so that was all squashed, yes. Also, while I was on site, I was taking a look at the brook. The brook looks fine and healthy. I did notice that there was a bridge spanning it towards the back, like a little footbridge. I wasn't sure if that was
newly constructed or existing?
I couldn't get close enough just because of the underbrush and the water. It was rushing pretty fast, so I didn't. But I did see it. It looked like it maybe had been there for a couple, a year or two. But I wasn't sure if that was there when you guys went on your original site walk. So I just wanted to mention it. I don't believe Mr. Van Dyke put it in, so it doesn't look brand new. But I did notice that there is some silt that had been covered up with hay and leaves in a different spot. So I did contact him and let him know that there was more silt breaching, and that stabilizing it with hay was not sufficient. That it would need to be removed.
Okay. And you've had discussions with who again?
Mr. Jamie Van Dyke, the contractor.
But he no longer owns the property, correct?
Yes, that was my next question, because it just sold and they haven't received the affidavit. Should I be find the new homeowner's information and contact them? So I'm not sure what their legal agreement is.
Well, ultimately, our recourse is always with property owner. So if we have an issue with the site in terms of wetland impacts, then we deal with the property owner. But I guess my take on it is if the contractor or the former owner is still willing to complete the work, let's work with him and hope he does it.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for an email back. Typically it takes a couple days, so.
Okay. So it doesn't sound like we're ready to vote on that one tonight. Anyone want to discuss it more?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like we're.
Nice pictures. So let's move on to extension permits. Do we have anything?
None at this time.
Communications?
The communication I had was I had talked to DEP, and they had received a complaint that there was neighbors dumping on 19 Willow Street, and they would like me to take action. They also had mentioned to that through their aerials, it looked like that there had been fill applied. When I was on site, I didn't see any fill on the back sides of the property, but I also wasn't extremely in depth. I did speak to one of the homeowners about, storing all her yard, her gardening items out there, and asked, that you should move that. It should be away from the area. She was like, it's really only been this wet back there for the past 2 years, but she would move it when she was feeling well, or when her son was home to do it for her.
Now, when we had the initial site walk, I don't recall. I walked all the way to the back of that area. I certainly didn't see anything like I saw in the front of this property at 19 Willow in terms of dumping. So if there was something, it would have been, I guess I would say, minimal amounts of scattered refuse probably. But if it's there, I think we should, at a minimum, send the owners a cordial letter. Just if it looks like it needs to be removed, we'll ask them to rake it out. But if it's no wetland impact, if it's just buffer, I'll send them a cordial letter making sure that they don't put anything in there. And we do have that refuse collection program in the city still, right?
Yes.
In the spring and the fall.
Yep, and then I believe it's AKS where we bring all of the dump in town, not in town, but the dump will also take it.
Okay. I mean, that's one thing I always like to try to do if there's a violation of this type, is try to give a property owner options.
Yeah.
People are just trying to clean up their yard, and rather than put it in the area that they can't, if we can mention that it can be collected at the curb, and when we're not in the collection, it can be taken elsewhere and just add that to it.
One question on that is, there was an email sent to City Hall asking that no one in my neighborhood be contacted by me directly, as I do live there. This letter would be sent on behalf of the Conservation Commission. I would sign it obviously on behalf of the Conservation Commission, so I just would like a vote on it because I guess there was some disgruntled issues with me signing, me mailing things and sending out agendas.
So this email you're referring to was from a resident, or?
Yes, from 19 Willow Street.
Okay.
And I did discuss it with HR.
So he's asking you not to send anything to other property owners?
He believes I shouldn't have contact with any of the neighbors in the neighborhood, as I do live there. I disagree. I feel like I'm very unbiased.
I don't agree with
That
that.
Seems to make sense.
I would like your opinion on it. I don't want to overstep or be.
You're not in a butter at all to any of these projects, correct?
No.
Yep.
Well out of the 200 foot.
Then you wouldn't have any conflict that I know of.
I just wanted the commission's.
Okay. I mean, if you're uncomfortable doing it and if you want the chair to sign whatever goes out rather than, I mean, that's fine, but I wouldn't be.
I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention in case, I have no problem doing it. It's a general letter. I've sent one out. I've sent many out about yard reviews and with all the dates and information. So I feel completely comfortable doing it, and I usually sign it on behalf of the Conservation Commission. So I just have it myself, but I don't mind changing it to on behalf of the Conservation Commission if you just vote.
Sure.
Send a letter out.
When you draft, why don't you draft it first, send it to the chair. He can send it to the rest of us if need be. The key thing dealing with homeowners is you want to be as cordial as possible, that's all.
I've already spoken to 4 of the homeowners just with all the issues there, and they've made it very, oh, we know not to put things back there because of the wetlands,
right.
And so I feel like it'll be very well received. I just don't want to leave anything.
Okay. Anyone else want to further discuss this? Okay.
I mean, can it just not be signed, and then that way?
Yeah, you want to sign it when it goes out. Yeah, that's-
Well, I mean, if it was on, I'm just saying, if it was on conservation letterhead.
No, it needs a signature. Yeah. Okay, so we've covered communications now, we've done Hill Street already. Meeting minutes. Has anyone had a chance to review the 3 sets listed?
I reviewed all 3.
You good? Liz?
I wasn't here on the September 11th one, so I don't think I can. Even though I did review them, but.
Anyone have any comments on any of these?
I've got a couple. On the August 28th minutes, under new hearings, letter N, it said that I wanted to see the area when it was flat, and it should be flagged. Because I don't think we wanted to flatten out that area. Also, on that same set of minutes, under letter B, I'm trying to read my own writing here, there was a comment about Mr. XXX, and I'm wondering if the scribe just didn't catch the person's name, or I didn't quite understand what that was.
I was unsure who it was, so that's why I left
I think it's
it.
35 Berkshire.
I believe that was Mr. Glemanakis, but I just wanted to make sure because I wasn't able to load the video. I just wanted to see the commission.
And that's all I saw.
Remember, I believe it was Mr. Glemanakis that was here, but I wasn't 100% sure. I couldn't load it.
Sure, it was him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought too. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on these? Does anybody want to make a motion on accepting these?
Do we have to take them in individually, right?
Let's do them individually, please.
Make a motion to accept the August 28th, 2018 minutes as presented. Is that the one you had?
Yes.
Along with the modifications Paul mentioned.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
All in favor? Anyone want to make a motion on the September 11th?
Make a,
Can we vote on the 11th? She was absent.
We can.
We got, okay.
make a motion to accept this, oh wait, is that the one, no, the one I missed was the one where we didn't have the meeting, right?
Yeah, which was the September 28th, which is September 28th, because you both were out
Yeah.
that meeting, but you were here
Yeah.
for the September 11th.
Yeah, so make a motion to accept September 11th, 2018.
No, I was not here in the, I was here in the next one, got it.
Because you and Larry out the same meeting, which I thought was September 28th.
25th.
I don't remember.
It
Look
was
at
the,
the minutes again.
Sorry about that.
going after the festival, I don't remember. Yeah, so it was the 25th. It would have been the 25th. Because the J Festival was the 22nd, was the weekend after. Yeah, I mean, I know it was at the September 11th, so, because we had a moment of silence at the beginning of that, so.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, I was there. What am I thinking of? The next one?
Yeah, but I have the email from you on September 25th saying you weren't able to make it, so.
Okay, so I'm getting a little confused.
Yeah, you were here on the
I thought-
11th.
Yeah,
Looking right at it.
okay.
Make a motion to accept the September 11th, 2018 minutes as presented.
I'll second it, Mr. Chair.
All in favor? Okay, and our last set is the September 28th, 2018.
25th.
It's supposed to be 25th.
It's 25.
25th.
Yeah.
September 25th, 2018.
Can we vote on it, even though, because I think only you,
We can't vote.
you can't vote,
Oh,
Dan's not
no,
here.
it's gonna be just the two of
Who
them.
was here for that one?
Dan, Brad, and Paul.
Okay, then we're gonna postpone that one.
Yeah.
I knew this one in September, for some reason, I was so sure it was the 11th.
The reason I know that's because Mr. Mershon was here that meeting, so.
All right, moving along, we have anything under number 7, new business?
Not this time.
Old business, the Newsnock Brook retaining wall collapse.
No updates, just missing.
No updates. Okay, enforcement, we already did 19 Willow Street. The other one we have is 138 Old Tavern Road.
Yes, so I did speak with the homeowner. Due to the weather and some conflict of schedules, his contractor will be getting out there next week to start taking the fill out. I'll go out to the site first, just to make sure. And then he has been in contact with Jamie from Whitman and Bingham, and they're getting ready to file the NOI. They had some changes that they wanted to make, so they are unsure of the exact time frame. He's trying to get it to me before the next meeting.
All right, any further discussion on this? Okay, Okay, also an enforcement, 723 Willard Street.
So I did provide you all with an email from Mr. Hannigan. They are hoping to have, they're finally starting to get some progress, says basically, and that they're hoping to have this all done by the time the snow flies. At this time, because of the weather, he can't give me its exact timeline.
Have they commenced anything out there yet? Do we have a hard copy of that email in front of us? Or?
I've attached one to everyone I thought, so. Should be in the back of the, so many papers.
Thanks.
Anyone get a chance to read this?
Mhm.
Want to have any discussion?
Yeah, maybe I guess we just hope it gets done. I mean,
Yeah, he hasn't done anything today, so there's really not a lot to discuss. There's been no talk of restoration, correct?
I believe it was mentioned in the actual enforcement
The
order.
enforcement order has it.
Right.
That would have to happen next spring, most likely, if they got it all done. When it's grown.
because we don't want them doing this in the springtime when it's all muddy. Well, actually, I mean, it's less of an issue, I guess, but it's not like there's a resource area involved. But
Yeah, it shouldn't.
I mean, it kind of sounds like they might have something by next meeting. Maybe.
No, they do say the beginning of November, so.
Mm.
Okay. All right, also under enforcement, 96 Exchange Street.
I was in contact with Mr. Morrow as well as Ken Oldfield, who informed me that last Thursday, the silt fencing and erosion controls would be renewed and adjusted. The straw wattles have been replaced, but the silt fencing has yet to be adjusted or fixed. It's starting to fall off all the stakes. I did go out there and check again today, and it was still in the same condition.
Are they working?
No.
Have they recorded this order?
Yes.
Okay, oh, this is the one that did, yeah. I'm
Yeah.
confused with the other one. Got it. And that silt fencing is gonna be important this time of year, because those straw wattles won't hold up very well over the winter.
Yeah. And the whole area is, it is very overgrown. The plants are actually starting to grow over the silt fencing. So I know it's gonna be a challenge to get out, but I really should be done.
How is it location-wise?
It's accurate according to the flags. So the flags that were put on by Mr. Morrow are set back farther than the original silt fencing and straw wattles are. As far as I can tell with the tape measure, they're accurate. It's just mainly waiting on having that silt fencing put back into place.
Do you want any further discussion on this? Anyone else? Last one under enforcement is DEP file number 199-1036, Lock Drive. Any updates on this one?
Yes, I believe Mr. Zaris is here to update us. I believe so, yeah, there's only
It might be good to have you look at this, because if there's any questions, pardon the grammar on the first response. Not as good at typing as I should be. These are responses item by item. So you should put them into your record. I believe
I'm
that's-
sorry, you are again?
James Exaris. I represent the applicant for the conservation permit that was order of condition that you issued. And I believe that's the plan that was approved.
Would you mind just giving a quick overview of where this project stands in terms of construction at this point?
The small structure, because there's two separate parcels in the same order, the small structure, the site work is underway, 84% completed, 85% completed. The large structure site has been grubbed, no construction has been commenced. The retention pond is 85% complete, which is on the closest or the furthest end from the cul-de-sac or the closest back to Mohawk Drive. Construction controls are in place at all locations that have been disturbed. Plans have not been altered in any way. As-built will be provided when the project is complete.
The foundation's into that smaller building, correct?
Not just the foundation, the buildings.
Right. So have you done an as-built for that at this point, just for zoning purposes?
The as-built will be provided when the project is complete. Nothing has been modified at all. Foundation is at the exact elevation where it should be. Site has not changed at all.
know there's some representations were made to you people that buildings have been relocated or changed or connected, or the foundation was raised for something to do with security. None of that is close to being true. It's not accurate. It's all stuff you're hearing, and it's not accurate.
Do we have is there a plan, like for, like, was the, whatever the foundation, is that, like, is there a plan before planning or something, like I'm trying to remember how this all came about, so.
I had received a couple of different complaints, as well as I had overheard the contractor and the engineer discussing taking fill from 96 Exchange Street to this location. So after looking into it and talking to a couple of different departments, I brought the concerns to the commission to see how we wanted to go forward. The commission voted on issuing an enforcement order due to the nature of the project and the floodplain. There were some concerns about the elevations around the building being altered, as well as the building being the floodplain being altered. That's why the commission asked for as-built to confirm or support that it hasn't or has been altered.
Do we have the original approved plan on?
We do have it on file.
On file.
It looks like it's the same one that's up
Okay.
there. It's very light. Doesn't show any of the flood. I don't believe it shows any of the floodplain compensatory storage on it.
It's actually on the plan if you look at it closely. The information is on the
Pastel.
plan. That's more, at the end of the planning board approval, we're asked to do a landscape drawing. So that integrates the landscape with the design, but all the information is contained on that drawing, including compensatory storage areas, elevations, everything is accurate. And I know there was some talk about a potential for modifying the site. That has not happened. And if that does happen, the people that would make that change or propose that change would have to come back to this board and revisit those items, as well as the planning board and the city council. But as of today, nothing has changed.
Also concern was is that when I was on the site on September 24th at about 11:30 a.m., I'd spoken to 3 people who were working there, and no one knew what the SWIP was, where the SWIP was. There was an empty box there, which I could provide you guys all with images of. As well, and there was also gas canisters, as you can see in the images, that were strewn about the property.
And with respect to those concerns have been brought to the contractor's attention. Sepatelli is a site contractor. He's a company out of Worcester. He's typically a very good contractor. He has a great reputation. Once we brought these concerns to his attention, he immediately made the correction. The SWIP is on site. His workforce has all been explained. It's a highly sensitive area. No gas cans. They were refueling the equipment and they left the gas cans there. And unfortunately, it's just not acceptable. So he's now aware of it, and it will not happen again.
And refresh my memory, Angela, where did the concern about the elevation come from again?
It was brought to my attention by a few other department heads who had received, people had told them about it, as well as my concern after talking to Mr. Oldfield and the owner of Dan's Paving and Excavating, who was doing the work over at 96 Exchange Street.
So those people were saying that there was an issue with the elevation, or?
Yes, they were saying, they told me they were bringing material from 96 to Lock Drive.
And I can assure you, no material has left 96 Exchange Street been brought to Lock Drive. Not one wheelbarrow has not happened. The only material that's on Lock Drive came from Lock Drive or is processed gravel for the subgrading of the parking areas. Nothing has been brought on site. There's been some crushed stone brought on for the sewer installation. They installed the sewers and manholes. That's a requirement. That material was brought. And some processed gravel was brought in for the parking areas, which is the subgrade of the asphalt. No other material was brought to the site. I know Dan Paving talked about potentially relocating excess material, but nothing's left Exchange Street yet. So I appreciate the concern, but it hasn't happened and it will not happen. It's not going there. The elevation of the foundation does look high. but they scraped up 1.5 foot of loom. And when you remove the loom, it makes that elevation look, makes that foundation look even taller. Of course, you're in a floodplain, so nothing's going down, everything's going up. Typically, they set the foundation in the ground, and they should typically set it 2 feet above the asphalt, which is the road asphalt. You set the grade, that's just typical for drainage. This site, you don't have that ability to do so, because you have compensatory storage or your floodplain. So the foundation does look like it's up out of the ground, but it's exactly where the plan's located. Slab is exact. It was shot last week when they did the sewer manhole. They have benchmarks. It's within 1/4 of an inch. It's right on, it's all on the money.
Was this your contractor or a surveyor that showed it?
Surveyor.
Surveyor? Okay. So can you get him or her to provide those numbers to us then?
I think he's already submitted that to the DPW, so I can ask for a copy of the DPW report.
Okay.
He shot the manholes for the as-built sewer. They installed the sewer line. So those manhole grades are on that asphalt, or on that submittal to the DPW for the as-built sewer. And then those same markings were used for grade and benchmark and transition to check the foundation. Because obviously, when we heard it was a concern, we checked it. We want to make sure if we have a problem, we want to know it now, not after the building's built.
Right, so without having a full-blown as-built at this point, it sounds like you've probably already got enough information to tell us whether or not there's an issue.
We're convinced it's where it's supposed to be.
Okay, yeah, if you could just get that information to us and...
Absolutely.
open it up.
I already have the document, so what I would do is I get a copy and forward it to you, and then I can give you the benchmark off the foundation and the slab, and you'll see it.
Perfect. So, yeah, I did reach out to DPW to see if they had those the other day, and they didn't have them yet, so.
They only, in fairness to the DPW, they only received them, I think, yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So in fairness to them, they didn't have them then on.
You sent them to John or Mark?
John Roseberry, yes. We emailed to John Roseberry from Kent Oldfield.
Right, perfect.
So he now has that information.
So I spoke to him about 3 o'clock yesterday.
And of course, we double checked him and we heard
Yeah,
it.
because I just asked him, I was like, you want to go out there and, shoot it just to see, and he said that he didn't have any benchmarks.
When I looked at it, I had the same concern. I said, wow,
Yeah.
the thing looks out of the ground, but it's the elevation. It's just not what we're used to seeing in construction. Because typically we go down, we don't go up. But here, we don't have that ability due to the site that we're on. It's a sensitive site, and everyone knows it. And they need to be cautious and work within the parameters of what they can do.
Was this the project, Angela, that we have questioned if the order was recorded?
Yes, the order has been recorded since that concern was brought up. Mr. Oldfield did provide me with the booking page number. I do have that in my office.
Anyone else have any comments for the discussion?
Do you know offhand what the elevation is?
No, I don't have the numbers up yet.
Right.
So when I received the concern, and it's a legitimate concern, I went and looked at the site. I said, yeah, that looks irregular. So I contacted the surveyor. He went out and met Ken Oldfield, who was doing the soil design, and they double-checked everything. And the surveyor works for Sepatelli, so he doesn't work directly for me, so I don't have access to his work product directly. And of course, I would ask Sepatelli to give me a copy, and I would give it to you. And anytime there's concern, you can feel free to call me. And she's been great. Marco was great before her. You call me, we'll respond immediately. It's in everybody's best interest to fix this stuff early in construction rather than later on when the drainage is in, the sewers and driveways are in, the parking lots are in. It just compounds the problem. So I appreciate you looking at it and notifying us early. And we did check it and we think we're okay. We're fairly certain we're okay.
Yeah, so I think if you wouldn't mind just getting us the elevation data.
Might
look at it. 'Cause, I mean, that's really the biggest concern because it's in the floodplain. We just want to make sure that we're good.
And the minute we heard, we double checked it because we want to be able to reassure you that it's proper. And the response from the surveyor was it's within 1/4 of an inch, which that's pretty good. We're not usually that good. That was excellent. The response was excellent.
Thank you for coming in.
Again, And anytime you have any concerns, feel free to contact us. We will respond to you immediately.
Thank you.
Thank you, take care. Do you want me to leave that for you guys? I have extras. If you want to keep that for your files, is that something that you would? No,
Yeah,
really?
that's great.
I already have it here, I have it
Okay.
updated, thank you though. I'm like, I like the frame.
With your permission, I'm going to take it. All right. You guys have a nice night. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure meeting you.
Okay, next item, emergency certifications.
None at this time.
Project update request, 35 Day Street.
Yes, they have completed all the work on the site except for the fence at this time. Due to an unforeseen injury, they'll be putting the fence in the spring. The father and the son are the contractors, and they have an injury and have had knee surgery, so. I'll be going out there just to double check, to take a look at the replication area. But I told you, obviously, can't install a fence with a bad knee. And then there was also a question, last meeting before that about Slack Brook, about where their COC was. I did contact them, and I had 3 different contacts in the files, so I did contact each one and left messages with each of them. After talking to Mr. Van Grazi, he did explain to me that with the Army Corps, sometimes it's a rotating engineer, so I might not get a call back for a couple weeks until the message gets to whoever it needs to get to. But I did follow up on it. Any requests from the commission?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Any requests from the commission?
On,
Any project updates that we look into?
what's that project we have where we're looking for the top course of pavement in that subdivision that DEP got contacted?
Ava Way.
Ava Way.
I haven't been out there for a couple weeks, but last time I was out there, I did go out there with the DPW engineers, and I did meet with Mr. Foreman. He did lay down his plan for, he wanted to have the granite curbing, the lights in, he's gonna have the pavement in. He's also been in contact with DEP on the course of action, I believe. He was putting in the granite curbing this week. I was planning on heading out on Thursday to take a look at the progress. But there hasn't been, I've been in contact with the neighbors, and there hasn't been any issues with the erosion controls. Those have been adjusted.
Any other projects, Commissioner?
I have a question. There was a tree cutting issue from, I forget the name of the pizza house, and the side of Jim's Lock and Key.
Asbestos.
Espresso?
Yeah, did that get resolved, or?
Make it
I
clean.
I
haven't
think the
had any.
neighbors were a little upset about trees on their property being cut.
Yes, I'm not sure about the civil issue, but I haven't heard anything from Espresso Pizza. I should make a trip up there this week.
I was just curious, I went by there the other day
Yeah.
and saw the sign, I thought, gee, I wonder what happened with that.
Any other ones?
Harvard Street, did I miss that?
The last update I had from Whitman and Bingham was that they were looking to start work the first few weeks in November, and they would be having a pre-construction meeting with me first, and it'll leave GBC Construction, the tenant there, that will be doing the work.
So nothing's been done there?
Nothing, no, and I've had a couple calls about the area, and I've gone down and taken a look, and it hasn't been anything every time I've gone down. Anything concerned to the wetlands.
That's all I have.
That's it. Okay, budget appropriation for office supplies, specifically the lock and file cabinet. So I have a few things in front of me.
Sorry, I wanted to provide, just because of the amount of the appropriation, how much the printer ink is for the office. And after looking through the files, it's usually ordered twice a year. And the budget that we have for office supplies is $600, which has already been mostly used to renew the Adobe Pro license for the office, to view the Adobe viewer for the PDFs. I also took a look at some different file cabinet options. I'm still looking at the desk options. I was brought to my attention that it really should be a locking desk. There have been items missing, as well as files missing from the office. I did have a lock put on the file room door, but for the files that we're currently using in the plans, we should have a file cabinet in the main area where the conference room is for easy accessibility.
Do I have the only copy of the letter?
Yes, sorry, I didn't have any copies.
I'll read this then. It says, Dear Chairman and members of the Leominster Conservation Commission, due to the recent events in the office, it has been recommended that we purchase a lock and file cabinet and a lock and desk to protect the documents in the office. The office will need printer ink and paper as well as other supplies, i.e. expo markers, folders, paper clips, binder clips, labels, mail-in supplies. I am asking for an appropriation of $2,500 from the Wetlands Fund to cover these expenses. I have attached the model of file cabinet I am looking at, as well as the prior warrant for the printer ink to compare costs. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you for your consideration. Angela. And this is the cabinet equipment.
Yes,
right?
that was the one, I believe I attached a full size and a half size. I'm thinking the half size, which is,
Yeah,
I think it's $439.99, which is on the back page, will be the one that will make most sense for the space. It's just to hold the current files we're going to use for the meeting, so I don't have to keep going to the file room, closing and locking it behind me every time I transfer files to the meetings or to meetings, as well as I'm having a little difficulty finding a locking desk that's L-shaped. So I did talk to Mr. Van Grazi, who recently just got one. He said his was about $2,000. I'm hoping to find one for like $800. And then for other office supplies.
Doesn't City Hall doesn't provide furniture to the employees?
You're asking the wrong person here. I don't
I would say, I think like a desk, I mean.
The desk I have was purchased with wetland appropriation funds from Joanne DiNardo for her, and I believe his name was David Hanna.
Well, we shouldn't be buying for him because he's not on conservation.
I believe both the desks were purchased, the funds, back in I think 2013 or 12 was the last appropriation for office supplies.
I don't know how it works, would they have spares anywhere?
I did look into that. I did look, the ones that they do have are broken.
Okay.
I don't mind. I can.
And I know sometimes there's rules like you can't transfer if they've been purchased with.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, I know we've been displaced before, and we've lost furniture. Like when we were at DPW, we got kicked out. They took all our files, put them in boxes, moved it all over here. All the furniture, everything stayed behind. So, we started investing in furniture, and then
As a furniture appropriation question before, the mayor, I don't mind switching it, but I was just told that Mr. Van Grazi that would come out of I was also looking into the gentleman who handles all the handiwork around City Hall, if I can just have him install a lock on the desk.
Right.
But I don't know if they'll be able to because the bottom drawer is broken and the top drawer is broken, so I'm not sure if that would work.
Also, do you have to purchase from a specific vendor or?
No, I can. That's why I've been looking to find them as budget friendly.
No, but I mean, you can't get even private sale,
Yeah, you can get. As far as I know, I can go, a yard sale.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Colomboso kind of offer his, but unfortunately they're not locking, which is what
Okay.
HR is recommending.
They have the punch out for the lock.
They do?
They do.
Oh, then you can just get
We
this.
just purchase the lock then.
Now,
Yeah, get like Jim's Lock and Key or somebody to come in
You know,
and,
you can
Yeah,
see
even
the
WB Mason,
Yeah.
I saw, they sell
Yeah,
this
you
a
get
lot.
the cylinders.
perforated
Yes,
oval up
well.
in the upper right-hand corner is there. I just gotta knock it out and put a lock in.
And Jim's Lock and Key would do that.
I don't
I
know.
would believe so.
Yeah,
Well, that
I'm like,
means
I don't
last
know
one.
this
Any of
stuff.
us could probably do
Oh, yeah, right.
I'm like, I don't know.
and you can switch them out, like if you lose a key or something, they're really easy to switch.
I have 3 4-drawers that I'd be happy to donate. If you can get locks for them, that's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And you need ink and all these other things
I'm
right now.
gonna need them
Yeah.
shortly, yeah. It's, yeah, I've been bringing, I have my own pens because I used to do trade shows, so I have a collection of pens. But highlighting everything, yeah, I had to get paper clips last week and it's, the Adobe Pro took a lot out of the budget, so.
What is that license costing?
It was $357 and some change,
For how long?
or I believe it's 1 year. So at the next meeting I have for my budget, I'll be, well, because it's not like I had to pay for the money that I get from the city for office supplies also covers the office supplies for the energy efficiency position, which is under my position.
So that cost was more than one license, or
Yeah, it was for 2 licenses.
2 licenses, $350 a year for 2?
Yes, and then once, if it ever happens, once Mr. Grudinsky is no longer in the office, it'll just be 1 license for me to do it.
We can't use conservation funds for a different department though.
But it's not a different department, it's,
Well, he's not conservation commissioner.
he's not Conservation
No.
Commission, he's Conservation Office. So the money I get from the city, the $600,
But-
has to go to both of them.
But he doesn't support the conservation commission, so the wetland fund,
But this is, I just wanted clarification, but that money, does that come from the city's budget, or does that come out of the
The
wetland?
600 comes from the city's budget. So
Okay.
that's why I use for the Adobe for myself and Mr. Grudinsky's license. The money that I appropriate would only be used for my, lock cabinet and a locking desk. The building department's committed enough to do the door for me.
So I don't see any issue there, because I see the line item in here for $600 for the office supplies. So if that license for that other gentleman in your office is being purchased under that, that's fine, as long as it's not coming out of the wetland.
It's not coming out of the wetlands, I would not.
Right.
I was very careful.
I mean, I don't mind with the ink, I mean, doing a one-time thing, but I mean, if we could come up with a way, I mean, with conservation, maybe using that PDF software to, maybe get PDF files of all the photos and stuff, just to save on, to save, spending $1,000 on ink and paper, cut that in half by, having electronic photos. I mean, everyone here, or at least I have a phone, so I mean, if I had them PDF, we wouldn't need to print so much, It just seems to me it'd be a better, I mean, I don't mind a one-time one, but I don't want to be spending $1,000 a year on ink. I don't, because honestly, after the meetings, this gets recycled. So if I have it electronically, I don't have the space to save every paper I have, so.
Typically what I've been doing for anything like the large prints and the photos and stuff, I use the community printer for those. My computer printer isn't able to print 5 pages, so I use a community printer that is funded by the building department with their permission for that, to save ink.
But I mean, the only thing is if it's coming out of the wetland fund, it just can't be shared by the other person. So if the other person's printing to the same printer and using up the ink, it should come from the general budget, not from the wetland fund. And if you have broken drawers, we bought those desks, so take the good drawers out of his.
Unfortunately, the energy efficiency position is also another reason I'm going to need those drawers probably in a couple months, so it's my job as well.
I see the supplies as something you need, so I don't mind doing it at this point. The furniture, but to explore the other options we discussed tonight.
Yeah, I didn't realize it had the hole for the lock, so.
Yeah, it just, they've
Like
been
Marco
punched
carried
out,
them up.
you know.
So what is the dollar amount for the supplies?
Can I change to the next meeting so I can see how much it would cost for the locks? So it's gonna be a lot less because of that.
Do you need anything on this list between now and next meeting?
No, I just brought in the expo markers.
Okay. Sure, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Cumberbatch for rescue.
Sounds like we need to really look at our budget carefully before submitting next time.
Well, advertising's reimbursed by the applicants, correct?
Yes, but it gets put, the way it works, City Hall gets put into a different fund, and then if I need more money for advertising, I have to talk to the comptroller's office. And it's like that for all the departments at City Hall.
Yeah, I think that money goes into the general fund.
Yeah, the general fund. I can remember the exact code off the top of my head.
What's the telephone cover?
That covers, I believe, the office phone as well as my work cell phone.
The dues and membership, does that include MACC memberships?
It does.
That seems low. It's $500 is budgeted.
Yep, so the MACC membership was $417 for this commission due to the number of members we have. If I, and then I also think it's a $20 membership for MACC. Oh, it's slipping from my head, the other one. It's a $20 membership. They have brown bag lunches and do a lot of field work trainings. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. So with that, we do have enough. If the commission grows, which we're obviously hoping that 2 vacant seats get filled, I would need more funds to pay for their member dues. But at this time, that's all the city has. As well as every year, it seems to go up a couple.
Right. I mean, if we had 7 seats, 500 really covers 5 seats plus yours.
I believe there was an issue with it ended up being $417. And I had a little bit of a carryover from the last fiscal year as well to kind of cushion that for more training.
I have to double check what they base their fee on again because
I think it's $65 a member.
the town I just did was, I think it was over $700 for 5 commissioners.
I think it ended, I have the actual physical bill in my desk, but it was $65 a member. Something. And then you can purchase extra materials, but we have most of the materials in the office.
Any other discussion on the budget? You all set with budget? Okay. All right, agents report. And we just recently had the MACC conference here in the city.
You guys are all sorely missed at the conference. I took the plan review and site visit procedure course as well as the writing effective orders of condition course while we were there. Both were very informative and they were both 3-hour classes with a lunch and then networking and discussions. Afterwards, if anyone would like to view, I binded the slideshows if anyone would like to take a look at them. to share. I also have all the information that they had at the meeting if anyone would like to see it.
Thank you for doing that for us.
Thank you for letting me go.
Anything else on this?
One thing while we were there, I was discussing a couple other agents from different towns was different policies, ordinances, and bylaws that different towns and cities have. Leominster has no bylaws. I do know we don't really have any policies either for the wetlands. And one that's been kind of coming around in a lot of different communities is the 25-foot or 30-foot no work zone. I've been looking into that, as well as the tree cutting policy. A lot of towns and cities are starting in place where if you cut certain size trees of certain dimensions, you have to replace them somehow, just to cushion the city or town's climate resiliency. I've just been looking into data on that. I found that very interesting and think it would benefit the city as well as the community to maybe look into those policies or ordinances or bylaws, depending on what would work best.
Do we know historically if this commission has ever tried looking into either of those options in the past?
I've asked pretty much every year to have it, and it would be an ordinance, not a bylaw, because we are a municipality, but basically the general consensus is that it won't get approval through city council, so we just kind of don't bother.
So I believe what...
And that's been the story since I started, so I don't know if that's just what people's opinions are, and that's not actually the case, but...
if that is the case, and talking to a couple of different agents who have kind of the same approval rating on that, was they would put in a policy. And so it's not a bylaw, so it really doesn't have any teeth, but it's a policy, and most engineers and contractors are willing to work with it. They find, for example, the town of Weston, they have a policy, not a bylaw.
I think you'd have a hard time selling the no-build, the no-touch kind of thing, but, I mean, if you have other general things to protect, the city and the environment, I mean, I think they would be open to that. I think it's always that no touch, no build, because it can really limit people that, from doing something that, I don't know,
Which is what
it seems to be unpopular.
The way the agent explained it to me is that the policy that they can make, they have a form for exceptions. For example, there was a restoration project, and they had to touch the banking. They wanted to restore the banking, so they just filled out an additional form just going over into the project. It kind of just protects the areas a little bit better and gives it a little bit more protection, but also if there's a project where there's really no other option, for example, the Central Street project we have had before us tonight, this was something that could be worked in, but it would have more consideration.
I think
it's just something I've been looking into.
I think it's a great idea, personally.
Really, the tree
That's why I ask about it every year.
The town of Arlington's really up their climate resiliency using the tree ordinances and bylaws over there, so it's just something that's been piquing my interest after the conference.
Yeah, I mean,
It's all maybe time.
we can look at the other towns are doing, other cities are doing.
I just wasn't sure how the commission felt about it, or how we go about enacting a policy, or if the commission thought it would be worthwhile.
Well, I mean, I'm familiar with a lot of communities on these. The policies that have worked well are starting to not work well because, a lot of sites are being built out. Leominster particularly has a lot of built out areas. There's not much left that I think a policy would really be adhered to, let's say. I've seen everything that's come before us for close to 2 years now, and it would violate most bylaws, ordinances, or policies that I've seen in terms of build out and closeness to the wetlands, things of that nature. I don't think you mentioned, you can have a policy that gives you exceptions to things. Well, that can certainly be done under an ordinance as well. I mean, it's very similar to planning board subdivision rules and regulations. Well, there's plenty of options for waivers for that. So if you had an ordinance that said, no buildings X amount of feet to a wetland or something like that, there's no reason you can't have language in that gives the ability to give somebody a waiver should the conditions warrant it. I think we could do a policy, but like you mentioned, it's not gonna have a lot of teeth. I'm not sure it's gonna give us what we want in terms of addressing the problem sites that we've had, for instance. It may be effective with giving the consultants some guidelines to at least start their design so they're not confused. Well, I thought we must have had a 30-foot no disturb zone or things like that, or basic things like how many copies of the application do we want, what format, things that we want to see on every plan so that people aren't confused in the future. One of the things that are on a lot of policies that I've seen is simply having a couple survey benchmarks. So if a project surveyor or engineer leaves the job, somebody else comes on, they can still work with that plan and take it on and continue the project or fix it if there's a problem, things of that nature. So it might be worthwhile to do a policy just laying out the minimum things we expect with the filing application process, and then trying to address some of these things we may have problems on, setting limits for work disturbance, things of that nature. But I think my gut tells me it would work probably at least a little less effective here than it has in other communities, just from the types of projects I've seen.
And most of like a 30 foot, I know that's just the number I heard a lot, but you can most definitely change it to like 15 foot, 10 foot. But I've been reading through a lot of different bylaws and ordinances through different cities and towns, and all of them have an enforcement piece in there, which gives the commission a little bit more teeth when it comes to enforcing. So maybe we wouldn't have these enforcements sitting on it would all require a lot more discussion, obviously, and we have to get KP law involved, but it's just been something I've been researching into.
And that's a very good point, because the other part of addressing these problems is the enforcement teeth part of it. So this commission doesn't really have the non-criminal disposition ability at this moment without an ordinance in place. So nobody has the threat of fines lurking over them until
You would never
the
threaten
department
fines.
gets involved or something like that, right? Yep.
I just wanted to let you guys know something I piqued my interest at the conference, and I'm looking into
I think
it.
it's a good idea. I think if we start small and don't try to, it might be more receptive if we start with a very basic, stick to like certain key things, and then you could like year to year, you could slowly add to it, kind of like we have the boilerplate and we review it, and then, if we find something isn't working or something's working, we can always,
Yeah. Quick question. Is there a difference between wetland regulations and wetland bylaws?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I do know this, I think it's the city or town of Arlington, they were not able to get their bylaws approved, so they had changed them over, I guess, over time into regulations. And
Well, you have to get your bylaw approved
they're having issues with something
in order to create the regulations.
Okay.
So depending on the language within their bylaw, they either can or cannot do what they're trying to accomplish with the regulation part of it. So we have the, in the city of Leominster, we have the stormwater bylaw ordinance, and we also have the rules and regulations under that.
Yeah.
So there's two separate pieces for it, and that's typical with anything.
Yeah, because I know they had their bylaws and they had regulations on tree cuttings and working within the buffer zone that they had put in there that were going to be opposed if they had made them into the bylaw, but they were able to get them in under the regulations. So it's another thing. I'm just learning about all this. I'm just trying to figure it out, where to go in all my reading, but just something.
Well, I know somebody who's dug into it quite a bit, so if you need a resource, feel free to reach out to them.
All
All right. So chairman's report. Chairman's not here. I have nothing to report. So the next meeting is Tuesday, November 13th, with a filing deadline of Thursday, October 25th. I have a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
I was like, I make that motion.
Second?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
All right. All in favor? Adjourn.